why Moses struck the rock twice and why God was angry. There's a moment in the wilderness where the greatest leader Israel ever followed lost the future he had waited for his entire life to enter. Not because he stopped believing, not because he abandoned God, not because the miracle failed. The water still came, the people were still saved, the need was still met, and that is what should unsettle you. Because if the miracle can still happen while the calling quietly collapses, then the danger isn't obvious: rebellion. The danger is something far more subtle, something that looks like obedience, something that sounds spiritual, something that still produces results. Tonight, you are going to understand what Moses did wrong when he struck the rock twice. But more than that, you are going to understand why God called it rebellion even though Moses got the outcome everyone was praying for. This story is not about temper. It is not about stress. It is not about a leader finally snapping under pressure. This is a story about representation. And by the end of tonight, you will be able to recognize the exact moment when spiritual authority quietly turns into spiritual theft. You will see it when it happens in others. And if you're honest, you will catch it in yourself before it costs you what you've been walking toward. Before this is over, 3 things are going to happen. First, you're going to see why God judged Moses' action even though the miracle still worked. Second, you're going to feel the weight of what it truly means to represent God when people are watching you closely. And third, you're going to learn a simple, daily practice that keeps authority clean before pressure distorts it. Stay with me. This builds slowly, and every layer matters. Here's what they don't tell you in Sunday school. Moses did not lose the promised land because he was tired. He did not lose it because the people complained one too many times. He did not lose it because God was harsh or unreasonable or impatient. Moses lost the promised land because in one emotionally charged moment, he misrepresented the heart of God and did not even realize he had done it. That should pause you, because most people believe disqualification comes from obvious sin, from public scandal, from walking away, from clear rebellion. But Moses shows us something far more unsettling. Disqualification can come while you are still leading, still serving, still producing miracles, still being used. You have been there. You have felt the exhaustion of giving, and still being questioned. You have felt the frustration of carrying responsibility for people who do not see the weight you carry. You have felt the sting of being doubted by those you have sacrificed for. And in that moment, when you are supposed to reflect God's patience, you feel your own irritation rise instead. You speak when you should listen. You react when you should reflect. You correct when you should reveal grace. You take the staff of authority, and without realizing it, you use it like a weapon instead of a symbol. That is exactly what happened at Meribah. Let me take you there slowly, so you feel the tension the text holds. The setting is Kadesh, a harsh wilderness at the edge of everything promised. The Israelites are standing in a place filled with memory and frustration. Nearly 40 years earlier, their parents stood here too, afraid, angry, distrustful. Now this generation is back, facing the same crisis. There is no water. Miriam has just died. According to Jewish tradition, the well that followed Israel in the wilderness was connected to her faithfulness, and now it has dried up. The people are thirsty, and thirst in the desert is not discomfort. It is death approaching 1 hour at a time. The people gather against Moses and Aaron. They use the same language their parents once used. Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die in this terrible place? It is generational trauma wrapped in present panic, fear repeating itself through different mouths. And Moses has heard this song for decades. This is where you need to slow down and pay attention. God speaks to Moses with clarity. The instructions are not vague. They are not symbolic. They are not open to interpretation. God says, take the staff, yes, the symbol of authority, but this time speak to the rock. Just speak. Let the people see that a word from God is enough. Let them witness provision flowing from relationship, not force. Let them learn that God does not need to be pressured into generosity. Let them see that God responds to trust, not violence. This moment is not just about water. It is about education. God is teaching a new generation who he is. But Moses is finished. You can feel it in the silence between the lines of the text. This is not a thoughtful pause. This is emotional fatigue. Moses is not just frustrated. He is insulted. These people have seen plagues devastate Egypt. They have watched seas split open. They have eaten bread that fell from heaven, and still, they do not trust. So Moses gathers the assembly in front of the rock. And then he speaks. Listen, you rebels. Must we bring you water out of this rock? Stop there. Listen to the language carefully. Must we bring you water? In a single sentence, Moses moves himself into God's seat. He shifts the ownership of the miracle without even noticing. The staff is still in his hand. The people are still watching. The pressure is still high. And then he strikes the rock. Once, twice, not in obedience, in frustration. And the water comes. Enough water for millions of people. Enough for livestock. Enough to sustain life in the desert. The miracle still works. And that is what makes this moment so dangerous. Because God speaks next. And his words are not emotional. They are precise. Because you did not trust me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites. You will not bring this community into the land I give them. Read it again slowly. You did not honor me as holy. The issue was not rule-breaking. The issue was misrepresentation. Moses showed the people a God who responds to anger. A God who needs to be forced into provision. A God who is irritated by need and must be struck before he gives. Moses showed the people a God made in Moses' image, instead of showing them Moses shaped by God's heart. That is the lesson most people never hear. And that lesson is the one that can save your calling if you learn it tonight. Here are the 3 truths you are going to walk away with before this ends. First, you are going to understand the difference between authority and ownership, and why confusing the two costs people their promised land every time. Second, you are going to learn how to recognize when your emotions are quietly rewriting God's message. And third, you are going to discover a daily practice that keeps you aligned with the source instead of becoming the source yourself. But you need the foundation before the practice makes sense. There is a pattern in Scripture that many people miss because they read for information instead of transformation. God consistently cares more about how he is represented than whether the task gets done. He would rather delay results than distort his character. Moses had struck a rock before. In Exodus 17, at the beginning of the wilderness journey, God told Moses to strike the rock at Horeb, and he did. Water came. The people were sustained. So why is the same action now called rebellion? Because time had passed, relationship had deepened, and God was revealing the next level of trust. The rock in Exodus represented Christ, struck once. The rock in Numbers represented Christ, who would speak life forever after. Strike once for redemption, speak forever for provision. Moses missed the upgrade. And here is where this moves from history into your life. Every time you default to methods that worked in your last season instead of listening for new instruction, you are striking the rock twice. Every time you use force because you are afraid gentleness will not work, you are telling people that God needs your intensity to be effective. And the moment ministry becomes about you, it stops being ministry. It becomes performance, platform, ego, dressed in spiritual language. You have seen it. The leader who cannot let a testimony stand without adding their story. The teacher who subtly reminds people how much they sacrificed. The servant who needs credit for obedience. That is striking the rock twice. Here is the invisible mechanism behind it. When you are tired and unappreciated, your ego offers you a trade. It says, they don't respect you enough for what you've done. Take a little credit. And because you have carried weight, the trade feels justified. So the language shifts. From God provides to I provide through God. It is subtle. It is deadly. The Hebrew word God uses when he says Moses did not honor him as holy is kadash. It means to set apart, to make distinct, to show the difference between the sacred and the common. Moses blurred the line. He made God's miracle look like human effort. And the people learned the wrong lesson. They learned that pressure produces provision. They learned that authority comes from force. They learned that leaders crack when pushed hard enough. Results do not justify misrepresentation. So what message was God trying to send at Meribah? That he is near, that he is gentle, that he responds to faith, not force. That relationship, not ritual, unlocks provision. Instead, Moses sent a different message. A God who is frustrated. A God who resents need. A God whose generosity comes with scolding attached. Can you see why God said no to the promised land? It was not cruelty. It was a consequence. God loved Moses enough to let him see the land from the mountain, but he loved the people too much to let Moses lead them in with the wrong spirit. Now pause and let this turn inward. Think about the last time you were exhausted and someone questioned you. What did your response teach them about God? Did you show patience or irritation, abundance or resentment, calm confidence or emotional volatility? Because people do not just watch what you do, they watch how you do it. And how you do it tells them who your God is. Your emotional posture becomes their theology. That is too much power for any human to carry, which is why God does not ask you to be perfect. He asks you to be accurate. Moses did not step aside when his emotions rose, and that is the lesson. Now let me show you how to avoid his mistake. This is the practice that keeps you clean. I call it the 3-mirror test. It takes 7 minutes a day and protects your calling, your relationships, and your future. First, the mirror of motive. Each morning, ask out loud, am I doing this for your glory or mine? Do not rush past the question. Let it settle. Write down the first honest answer. Second, the mirror of message. Ask, if people only watched my life today, what would they learn about God? Write the answer honestly. Then write the God you want to show. Third, the mirror of margin. Ask, what moment today is most likely to make me react instead of respond? Prepare a 1-sentence prayer for that moment. Do this for 7 days. By day 3, you will catch yourself mid-reaction. By day 5, the weight will lift. By day 7, people will notice a difference. Moses did not have this practice. He waited until pressure was at full volume. You do not have to wait. When you mess up, and you will, do not spiral. Moses struck the rock wrong, and water still flowed. God still used him, but Moses did not course correct fast enough. You can. Fast repentance restores credibility faster than flawless performance. Here is the warning. As you grow clearer, attention will grow, and the higher your platform, the longer your mirror time must be. Do not negotiate this. Your promised land depends on it. Moses struck the rock. The water still came. That is the warning. God may still work even when you misrepresent him. And if you are not careful, you will mistake provision for approval. But tonight, you have been given what Moses did not have, a way to check alignment before pressure costs you the future you have been walking toward. Every day you will either speak for God, or speak over him. Look in the mirrors, and do not strike the rock twice.